Have you ever felt your entire inner world collapse? Not because of something someone said, but because of what they didn't say. That quiet, that absence, that silence that somehow cuts deeper than any blade ever could. It's strange how a single person's withdrawal, a delayed reply, a sudden distance, a shift you can quite name, can tear open a space inside you that feels far too big, far too empty, and far too heavy to carry. One moment your peace feels intact. The next, it is as if someone reached inside you and ripped out the center of your stability without even touching you. Their silence becomes a storm. Their absence becomes a weight. Their indifference becomes a shadow that follows you everywhere. It's in moments like this that you truly understand. Attachment is not loud, it's quiet, it's invisible, and it's powerful. Attachment is the subtle thread you don't notice wrapping around you until it tightens. It starts as warmth, connection, meaning, then slowly becomes a leash you didn't realize you were holding out for them to take. You think you're choosing love. You think you're choosing devotion. But at some point, without knowing when it happened, you stop choosing and start surrendering. You hand someone else the key to your emotional weather. They decide when the sun shines inside your chest and when everything collapses into a storm. Their actions become your confidence. Their attention becomes your validation. Their silence becomes your suffering. And you tell yourself it's normal, that feeling this much means you care, that giving this much means you're loyal, that losing yourself is somehow proof of love. But deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the longing, beneath the hope, a quieter truth whispers through the cracks. You didn't fall in love. You handed over your power. Every time their mood determined yours. Every time you waited to feel okay only after they reached out. Every time your peace depended on someone else's presence, attention, or approval. You surrendered a piece of yourself. The Stoics warned us about this centuries ago. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Yet how often do we forget this? How often do we willingly place our inner world into the hands of someone who may not even know how much power they hold? How often do we allow another person, flawed, inconsistent, human, to become the source of our emotional survival? And maybe the harder question is, why? Why do we give away what was always meant to be ours? Why do we allow attachment to become a quiet prison we lock ourselves inside? This is where your journey begins, not in blaming them, not in shaming yourself, but in waking up to the truth that your peace, your strength, and your identity were never meant to be controlled by anyone else. Because here is the reality you've avoided for too long. You can take it all back. You can reclaim your inner world. You can break the emotional chains you didn't realize you forged. You can detach, not as an act of coldness, but as an act of liberation. And once you do, something extraordinary happens. Their silence no longer shakes you. Their absence no longer empties you. Their choices no longer decide the quality of your life. Detachment isn't the death of love. It's the return of self-respect. It's remembering who you are beneath the influence of anyone else's behavior. It's choosing to stop living as a reaction and start living as the author of your own emotional world. And if you're ready, truly ready, to step into that version of yourself, if you're ready to build a mind that can't be broken by someone leaving, if you're ready to reclaim the strength you gave away, then you're exactly where you need to be. Because this isn't just another video. This is the beginning of your transformation, grounded in Stoic wisdom, forged in clarity, and built for the version of you who refuses to be controlled ever again. Before we continue, take one decisive step for yourself. Subscribe to True Stoic Way and commit to mastering your mind, your peace, and your freedom. Your journey starts now. Attachment never announces itself when it arrives. It doesn't march into your life with warnings or conditions. It slips in quietly, through a smile that lingers longer than expected, through a shared moment that feels more meaningful than it should, through the warmth of someone finally seeing you in a way the world has overlooked. It begins in these tiny, innocent sparks. the conversations that run late into the night, the laughter you didn't know you needed, the comfort of feeling understood. And before you realize it, you start opening doors inside yourself that were once guarded, letting someone walk through halls you never meant to share. Natural, human. You tell yourself, this is connection. This is what it means to care. And maybe it is, in the beginning. But attachment rarely stays in its early form. Like a vine creeping across a wall, it grows quietly, expanding into spaces you thought were protected. It intertwines itself with your thoughts, your routines, your sense of comfort. Before long, you're no longer thinking about them occasionally. They become the background music in your mind, the silent influence behind every emotional shift. This is how it happens. Little by little, almost too subtly to notice, you begin giving parts of yourself away. You compromise small things first, adjusting your schedule, reshaping your priorities, quieting your own needs so theirs can speak louder. You tell yourself it's just care, just compromise, just affection. But soon you're giving away more than time. You're giving away identity. The things that once mattered to you begin to blur, replaced by the gravitational pull of someone else's presence. And the most dangerous part? It feels like love. You believe sacrifice is proof of loyalty. You believe losing parts of yourself is a small price to pay for closeness. You believe that the more you give, the more secure the connection becomes. But what you don't see, not yet, is that attachment isn't asking for pieces of your time or energy. It's asking for pieces of you. There's a quiet moment in every attachment when something shifts, a point where caring becomes dependence. You stop noticing who you were before them. You stop asking what you want and instead ask what keeps them close. Your happiness rises and falls depending on whether they're attentive or distant. Your peace becomes tangled in their moods, their words, their silence. This is the turning point where attachment stops being connection and becomes captivity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But attachment makes you forget this truth. It tricks you into believing your emotional state belongs to someone else, that your worth expands when they approve of you and collapses when they withdraw. Attachment, at its core, is the slow surrender of your inner world. It's the unconscious agreement that says, take my peace, take my certainty, take my sense of self, just don't leave. And once this agreement is made, everything begins to orbit around them. Your day feels brighter when they reach out and darker when they don't. Your confidence swells when they compliment you and shrinks when they're distant. Their silence becomes a threat. Their attention becomes a reward. You begin to live not as yourself, but as a reflection of their behavior. Psychologists call this emotional outsourcing, giving someone else the job of regulating your feelings. It happens because the human mind craves attachment, not out of weakness, but out of instinct. We are wired for connection. Our biology rewards closeness. Yet somewhere along the way, the mind confuses companionship with dependency. And dependency feels safe. Until it isn't. You think you're building a bridge between two people, but what you're actually building is a cage around your own heart. A cage so comfortable, so familiar, that you don't notice the bars until they close around you. Attachment makes you forget where you end and where the other person begins. It blurs boundaries until your identity becomes a shadow, shaped more by them than by you. You begin asking questions you never thought you'd ask. Who am I without them? What do I feel without their influence? Why does their silence feel like punishment? These questions reveal the danger they've fallen into. The danger of basing your existence on someone who may not even realize how tightly you're holding on. Because attachment, when unchecked, is not love. It is self-erasure. It is a quiet prison disguised as intimacy. And the bars of that prison are built from illusions. The illusion that giving more will keep them close. The illusion that losing yourself will bring you closer together. The illusion that your emotional world must revolve around theirs. But here's the truth attachment never wants you to see. Your peace was never meant to depend on someone else. Your identity was never meant to be traded for closeness. Your worth was never meant to shrink or grow at the hands of another human being. You were always meant to carry your own center. Once you recognize the nature of attachment, how it begins, how it creeps, how it binds, something inside you wakes up. You begin to see the subtle chains you once mistook for connection. And when you see those chains clearly, the question becomes unavoidable. If I've given away this much of myself, how do I take it back? That question leads you to the next part of your journey, the path of detachment. Not detachment as coldness or indifference, but detachment as liberation. Detachment as the act of returning your emotional world to its rightful owner, yourself. And that is where we go next. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the emotional world. People hear the word and immediately imagine coldness, an icy heart, a wall, a refusal to care. But true detachment has nothing to do with becoming numb. It has everything to do with becoming free. Because the truth is this, detachment isn't about pushing someone away. It is about pulling yourself back from the edge where they've been handing away your peace back from the imbalance where someone else's behavior decides the quality of your life, back from the emotional cliff where your happiness depends on external forces instead of your own inner stability. Detachment is the act of returning home to yourself. If attachment is the slow surrender of your identity, then detachment is the retrieval, the process of gathering all the pieces you gave away and placing them back into your own hands. When the original message said, "You're not losing the person, you're losing the dependency," it didn't exaggerate. You aren't losing a soul connection. You're losing a chain. You re-losing the part of you that believed your value lived in someone else's acknowledgement. You're losing the illusion that another human being has the authority to define your worth. Think of it this way. If attachment is a vine wrapping around your ribs until you forget how to breathe on your own, detachment is learning to inhale again, deeply, fully, without permission. If attachment is placing your heart into someone else's hands, detachment is gently taking it back and remembering it belonged to you all along. If attachment is a room with no windows, because you've blocked every exit with your expectations of another person, detachment is opening the door and realizing the world outside is bigger than the person you confined yourself to. Most people fear detachment because they mistake it for abandonment, as if letting go means losing something essential. But what if the opposite is true? What if letting go is how you recover what's essential? Pain tells you that detachment is dangerous. Fear tells you that detachment is lonely. Your mind whispers that if you loosen your grip, everything will fall apart. But that voice inside is not truth, it's conditioning. A lifetime of equating closeness with control, love with dependency, connection with self-loss. In reality, detachment doesn't break you, it restores you. Detachment is the moment when you stop negotiating your self-worth with someone else's actions. It's the moment when you stop waiting for their attention to feel whole. It is the moment when you stop expecting someone to save you from the emptiness you were always meant to heal within yourself. Detachment is not an emotional shutdown. It's an emotional realignment. It shifts the center of gravity back to where it belongs, inside you. And here's the part most people don't see. Letting go is only painful when you're letting go of an illusion. When you release your dependency, you're not losing something real. You're losing a story you told yourself. You're losing the fantasy that someone else can complete you. You're losing the fear-driven belief that you are not enough unless someone chooses you. Once that illusion falls away, the pain begins to dissolve with it. Because the truth is, the person was never your source of peace, the idea of them was. And ideas fade when confronted with reality, just like shadows disappear when you turn on the light. A lot of what hurts during detachment is not the absence of the person. It's the confrontation with your own emotions. The silence they leave behind doesn't ache because of who they were. It aches because, in that space, you finally hear yourself. And hearing yourself can be terrifying if you've spent years drowning your inner voice under attachment. This is why solitude feels frightening. Not because loneliness is unbearable, but because solitude forces you to face the parts of yourself you once tried to outsource to other people. You're not afraid of being alone. You're afraid of meeting the version of you who has been waiting behind the noise. But once you do, once you sit with your thoughts, witness your own insecurities, explore your inner landscape, something profound happens. The fear starts to disappear. You begin to realize that detachment was never about losing someone. It was about discovering yourself beyond them. You rediscover what it feels like to think for yourself, feel for yourself, choose for yourself. You stand again on your own emotional legs, not shaking with fear, but grounded with clarity. Detachment, in its purest form, is self-trust. It's the assurance that no matter who leaves, no matter who stays, you remain whole, you remain steady, you remain enough. And the more you embody detachment, the more you see how much of your life was built on fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of not being valued. But once you detach, those fears lose their grip. They shrink. They quiet down. Suddenly you begin to understand why the Stoics preached emotional independence. Not because they rejected love, but because they understood that love without self-possession becomes slavery. When you detach, you don't feel less, you feel clearer. Your emotions no longer swing on someone else's pendulum. Your peace no longer depends on external validation. Your identity no longer dissolves in the presence or absence of another person. Detachment returns you to yourself, and from that place, everything becomes possible again. But detachment raises a deeper question, one that must be asked before we move forward. If detachment is liberation, then why do we cling so tightly to the very people who hurt us? Why do we chase those who withdraw, hold on to those who let go, and crave those who cannot or will not choose us back? Why do we anchor ourselves to those who were never meant to stay? To understand that, we must walk into the next truth, the truth about the illusions we create, the fantasies we cling to, and the dreams we project onto people who were never capable of fulfilling them. And that journey begins right now. When someone leaves your life, or stops choosing you, or stops showing up for you, the pain that follows can feel unbearable. It feels like a piece of you has been torn away, like something irreplaceable has disappeared. You replay memories, imagine alternate endings, bargain with reality, and cling to the idea that losing them is losing the one thing that made you feel whole. But here's the truth most people never see until much later. You're not grieving the person. You're grieving the story you built around them. You're grieving the potential, not the reality. You're grieving the dream, not the relationship. You're grieving the future you imagined, not the person who stood in front of you. This is why the pain feels so deep. Because you're not losing what was, you're losing what you hoped it would become. Every attachment carries a hidden fantasy, the version of them you believed in, the role you thought they would play in your life, the emotional home you hoped they would build with you. You didn't fall in love only with their presence. You fell in love with the meaning their presence created inside your mind. You didn't love them. You loved who you believed they could be. This is where projection enters the picture. Projection is the mind's attempt to turn desire into reality. It takes your need for connection, your longing for safety, your hunger for love, and paints those qualities onto someone who may not actually possess them. It is like holding up a canvas and using them as the outline for the masterpiece you want to see. You take their small gestures and turn them into promises. You interpret their flaws as temporary obstacles. You excuse their distance because the version of them in your imagination is still close, still loving, still available. You build a relationship not with a person, but with an idea. Jung spoke about this. He said, "People meet through their projections, not their realities. We don't see others as they are. We see them as we need them to be. We see them through the lens of our hopes, wounds, and unmet desires. This is why heartbreak often feels like an identity crisis. When the person leaves, the fantasy leaves too, and you are forced to see the gap between what you imagined and what truly existed. It's the collapse of the illusion that hurts, not the person walking away. That illusion becomes a fog, the fog of fantasy, a mist that blurs the truth, softens the red flags, brightens the ordinary moments, and convinces you that what you feel is destiny rather than attachment fueled by fear. Inside this fog, they appear larger than life, more caring than reality, more loyal than their actions show, more connected than their effort ever proved. In the fog of fantasy, your loneliness becomes the glue, your hope becomes the scriptwriter, your wounds become the lens. But when detachment begins, when you finally step back, breathe, and see things as they are, the fog begins to lift. And when the fog clears, the truth often hits with astonishing clarity. They were never the person you built in your mind. They were never as invested, as committed, as aligned, or as emotionally available as you convinced yourself they were. They weren't your soulmate. They weren't your missing half. They weren't the one who would finally stay. They were human, imperfect, inconsistent, limited. But your mind turned them into something mythical. And when reality replaces the fantasy, you finally see the truth behind your heartbreak. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of them. You lost the version that texted first, cared deeply, showed up for you, and made you feel alive, the version that existed only in your imagination. You lost the version that was capable of giving you the love you've always wanted, not the version they actually were. That loss hurts because fantasies are intoxicating. They give you certainty when reality feels chaotic. They give you comfort when your inner world feels unstable. They give you hope when your wounds whisper that you're not enough. So yes, when the illusion collapses, the pain is real. But the pain has purpose. It forces you to confront the truth you avoided. You were in love with potential, not presence. You were loyal to possibility, not partnership. You were committed to a dream, not a person. Think of a real situation, maybe one from your own life. A man stays because he believes she might change. A woman waits because maybe he'll realize what he lost. Someone holds onto breadcrumbs telling themselves they're a feast. Someone confuses temporary affection with deep commitment. These are not experiences of love. They are experiences of fantasy. They are emotional projections chasing a mirage. And when the mirage disappears, it leaves behind clarity, sometimes painful, but always liberating. Because once the illusion is gone, you can finally see the truth without distortion. They weren't right for you. They weren't meant for you. They weren't capable of offering what you kept giving. And here's the part that leads you toward true freedom. When the illusion fades, the yearning fades with it. The spell breaks, the emotional weight lifts. You stop trying to change, fix, or prove yourself worthy. You stop begging reality to match the dream. You stop pretending the connection was deeper than it was. What remains is truth, raw, steady, undeniable truth. And truth, even when it hurts, is always a doorway to liberation. You start reclaiming the energy you once poured into someone who could not receive it. You start rebuilding the identity you surrendered in the name of fantasy. You start seeing yourself not through their absence, but through your own presence. And from that place, you begin to ask the next essential question. If the person wasn't truly what I imagined, then what inside me made me hold on to the fantasy so tightly? Why do we cling to illusions with more devotion than we cling to reality? That question is where your deeper healing begins. It leads you into the territory of pain, purpose, and growth, and into the understanding that every illusion you let go of brings you one step closer to becoming your true self. And it is from here that we continue the journey. Pain is one of the few forces in life that refuses to be ignored. You can distract yourself from it. You can drown it out with noise, with people, with work, with fantasies. But eventually, when the world quiets and you, left alone with your thoughts, pain rises to the surface like a truth determined to be heard. And that's because pain was never designed to punish you. Pain is designed to wake you up. Seneca once said that suffering shapes the soul the way fire tempers steel, not to destroy it, but to refine it. Stoicism never taught us to outrun pain or fear it. It taught us to stand still long enough to understand it, to let it speak, to let it reveal what we've been avoiding. Because pain is not the enemy. Pain is the messenger. It arrives when something inside you has been neglected, violated, ignored, or betrayed. It shows up to illuminate the parts of your life where you've been living blind, the illusions you've protected, the patterns you've repeated, the boundaries you've ignored, the truths you've avoided. Pain is the mind's way of saying, look here. This is where you need to heal. But most people never let pain teach them. They run. They numb. They romanticize what hurt them. They fight to resurrect dead connections. They chase closure from people who never gave clarity. They cling to fantasies long after reality has shattered. In doing so, they silence the very lesson pain was trying to deliver. The Stoics believed that life has a way of repeating its lessons until we learn them. If you don't understand the message behind the pain, you attract the same story in a different body, the same heartbreak in a different relationship, the same disappointment wrapped in a new beginning, the same betrayal in a kinder disguise. Pain is the cycle breaker, if you're willing to listen. Imagine a person who repeatedly falls for partners who show inconsistent affection, someone who chooses emotionally unavailable people again and again. The pain of abandonment repeats, not because the world is cruel, but because the pattern within them hasn't been confronted. Pain becomes the mirror. Jung echoed this truth when he said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. You cannot grow while avoiding the very emotions that were meant to shape you. You cannot rise while pretending you're not wounded. You cannot heal while clinging to the illusion that the pain was someone else's responsibility." Pain forces you to meet yourself, the self behind the attachments, the fear, the fantasy. It pushes you into the quiet corners of your mind where your shadows live, your insecurities, your old wounds, your fear of not being enough, your longing to be chosen, your belief that love must be earned through suffering. Pain shows you not what is wrong with the world, but what is unresolved within you. And when you finally stop resisting pain, when you stop numbing it, stop blaming others for it, stop running from it, something shifts. You begin to transform. Because pain has a strange trajectory. It hurts at first. It confuses you. It overwhelms you. But if you stay present long enough, it begins to reveal the truth beneath the chaos. You start asking different questions. Instead of, "Why did they hurt me?" you ask, "Why did I stay?" Instead of, "Why didn't they choose me?" you ask, "Why was I trying to prove I'm worth choosing?" Instead of, "Why were they inconsistent?" you ask, "Why did I tolerate inconsistency?" Instead of, "Why did this happen to me?" you ask, "What part of me needed to learn from this?" These questions sting, but they liberate. They pull you out of victimhood and into awareness. And awareness is where transformation begins. Pain is the gateway to wisdom. It's the teacher that shows up uninvited, but leaves you stronger than you were before. Pain sharpens your intuition, teaching you to spot the red flags you once romanticized. Pain strengthens your boundaries, teaching you to protect your peace instead of sacrificing it. Pain deepens your self-worth, teaching you that you deserve more than breadcrumbs of affection. Pain expands your emotional intelligence, teaching you to distinguish between love and attachment, connection and fantasy. With every painful lesson, you become more aligned with the person you're meant to be. Because pain breaks illusions, and what remains after the illusion is gone is the truth. And truth is the highest form of clarity. When you stop resisting the pain, you begin to see life more clearly, without denial, without projection, without fear. You stop attracting the same wounds, because you no longer live from the same unhealed patterns. Pain ends cycles. Pain exposes patterns. Pain forces evolution. It is through pain that you learn your deepest lessons, that you cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved, that you cannot love someone into loving you back, that loyalty means nothing when given to the wrong person, that peace is worth more than any connection that costs you your sanity. Pain teaches you the difference between attachment and love, between longing and compatibility, between desire and destiny. And once you understand that, truly understand it, pain loses its power to torture you. It becomes guidance instead of suffering. It becomes illumination instead of punishment. It becomes strength instead of weakness. The moment pain reveals its lesson, the suffering begins to fade. What remains is understanding, and understanding is what helps you break free from the patterns that once chained you. And this leads to the next truth, the one most people avoid. The real lesson was never about them. It was always about you. What in you needed healing? What in you needed boundaries? What in you confused longing with love? What in you kept clinging to someone who couldn't choose you? The pain didn't arrive to expose them, it arrived to reveal you. And now that you've begun to see yourself clearly, the next step of the journey awaits. Understanding the patterns that kept you trapped, and the ways you've abandoned your own needs in the name of love. That is where we go next. There comes a moment in every journey of healing where the focus must shift inward. Not toward the person who hurt you, not toward the story that broke you, not toward the fantasy that blinded you, but toward the mirror you've been avoiding. Because the truth is hard, uncomfortable, and necessary. The real problem was never them. The real problem was how much of yourself you were willing to abandon just to keep them close. Pain exposes patterns, but healing requires owning them. You can spend years analyzing their behavior, why they pulled away, why they changed, why they disappointed you, why they couldn't to love you the way you loved them. But none of that brings clarity until you ask the question that actually matters. What part of me allowed this to continue? It's a brutal question. It slices through denial. It forces you to confront the one person you can't walk away from, yourself. And somewhere in that confrontation, you begin to see it. All the small ways you betrayed yourself long before anyone else betrayed you. You see the moments you said yes when your soul was screaming no. You see the times you tolerated disrespect because you were afraid of losing connection. You see how you shrank your needs, dimmed your voice, lowered your standards, softened your boundaries, all in the hope that doing so would make you easier to love. You see how often you chose them instead of choosing yourself. This is self-betrayal, the kind so subtle that you don't even feel it happening until it has already drained your spirit. Self-betrayal is agreeing to relationships that exhaust you. Self-betrayal is letting someone else's inconsistency become your normal. Self-betrayal is giving your loyalty to someone who hasn't earned it. Self-betrayal is convincing yourself that being chosen by them is more important than choosing yourself. And the painful part is this: you don't betray yourself out of stupidity. You betray yourself out of fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear of the emptiness you feel when you're not attached to someone. These fears didn't appear out of nowhere. They were formed in childhood, shaped by wounds you never addressed, reinforced by relationships where you learned to place other people's needs above your own. If you grew up feeling unseen, you attach to anyone who notices you. If you grew up feeling unsafe, you cling to whoever gives you temporary comfort. If you grew up earning love through effort, you repeat that cycle in adulthood, overgiving, overproving, overextending. Attachment is rarely about the person in front of you. It is about the child within you still searching for what they never received. This is why you tolerate what hurts you. This is why you return to what breaks you. You're not choosing the person, you're choosing familiarity, even if that familiarity is unhealthy. And this is where Jung's words echo with piercing clarity. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you cannot become who you truly are while living as a fragmented version of yourself, one who molds their identity around someone else. S needs one who betrays their values for validation, one who silences their truth to avoid rejection. To become who you truly are, you must reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned in the name of attachment. And that requires honesty, raw, unfiltered, uncomfortable honesty. Ask yourself, how many times did I ignore my intuition because I didn't want to accept the truth? How many times did I justify red flags because losing them felt scarier than losing myself? How many times did I pursue their love while neglecting my own? How many times did I pretend I was okay just to keep them comfortable? Every time you betrayed yourself, a part of your identity dimmed. Every time you abandoned your boundaries, your self-respect eroded. Every time you prioritized their presence over your peace, you drifted further from the person you were meant to be. Self-betrayal is the quiet thief that steals your wholeness, piece by piece. But here's the truth you must hold on to. You cannot change what you don't acknowledge. The moment you see your patterns clearly, truly see them, you gain the power to break them. For the first time, you realize the attachment wasn't about love. It was about the part of you that didn't believe you deserved more. It was about the wounds that taught you to equate sacrifice with affection. It was about the fear that told you being alone was failure rather than freedom. And when you recognize this, something begins to shift inside you. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of someone else's actions. You start seeing how your own patterns kept you stuck. This shift is painful, but it is liberating. It is the beginning of emotional sovereignty, the moment when you stop blaming them and start understanding you. You begin to see that the person who hurt you was simply a mirror. They reflected the places where you lacked boundaries. They highlighted the insecurities you tried to hide. They exposed the voids you tried to fill with validation. They revealed the parts of yourself you abandoned long ago. They were not the lesson, you were. And as the truth settles in, you face a choice: continue repeating the same cycles or break them. Breaking them requires courage. It requires rebuilding your boundaries. It requires redefining your standards. It requires learning to choose yourself even when someone else won't. It requires loving yourself enough to walk away from what diminishes you. It requires becoming whole again, from the inside out. This is the path toward becoming who you truly are. Not the version shaped by fear, not the version shaped by wounds, but the version shaped by self-respect, self-awareness, and emotional strength. And once you begin this work, the work of reclaiming the parts of yourself you abandoned, you start stepping into a new identity. An identity built not on attachment, but on truth. Not on fear, but on self-worth. Not on dependency, but on stability. And from this place, you can finally transition into the next stage of healing. Setting boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect the version of you that can no longer afford to disappear for anyone. Boundaries are not walls, though people often mistake them as such. Walls keep everything out. Boundaries let in what aligns and filter out what drains. And learning this distinction is one of the greatest turning points in reclaiming your emotional life. Because every time you fail to set a boundary, you silently grant someone else permission to define you. You allow their moods to shape your peace. You allow their expectations to override your needs. You allow their behavior, good or bad, to dictate your emotional landscape. A life without boundaries is a life lived according to someone else's script. And that's the hidden cost of avoiding boundaries. You surrender authorship of your identity. Why do we avoid setting them? Why do we stay silent when we want to speak? Why do we bend when we want to stand firm? Because somewhere deep within, many people equate boundaries with conflict. They fear being rejected. They fear being called difficult, demanding, or selfish. They fear hurting others. But mostly, they fear losing the connection, even if that connection is the very thing hurting them. This is the paradox of insecure attachment. You fear losing the person more than you fear losing yourself. So you tolerate what wounds you. You shrink yourself to remain accepted. You let others overstep because the thought of standing alone feels unbearable. And yet, every time you swallow your truth to keep someone comfortable, a part of you breaks. That fracture might be quiet, almost invisible at first, but it accumulates, and eventually, it becomes the source of resentment, bitterness, exhaustion, and emotional collapse. The cost of not having boundaries is not peace, it is self-destruction. Boundaries aren't punishments, they aren't weapons. They aren't ultimatums. Boundaries are clarity. Boundaries are self-respect. Boundaries are the emotional equivalent of saying, "This is who I am, this is what I need, and this is what I will no longer accept." Think of boundaries like the immigration checkpoint of your inner world. Your heart is a sovereign nation. Your peace is its capital. Your values are its laws. And you, not anyone else, decide who is allowed entry. Just as a country doesn't open its borders to every traveler without question, you are not obligated to give everyone unrestricted access to your energy. Your boundaries determine who gets close, who stays, who must leave, and who never gets in at all. This isn't cruelty, this is governance. This is emotional leadership. This is knowing that not every person deserves a front row seat to your inner life. When you set boundaries, something powerful happens. The wrong people fall away. Not because you push them out, but because they cannot thrive where manipulation fails, where inconsistency is questioned, where disrespect is unaccepted, where access is earned, not assumed. And once the wrong people fall away, the right people begin to appear. The wrong people fall away. People who respect your limits. People who don't demand more than you can give. People who show up without needing to be chased. People who value your no as much as your yes. People who understand that connection should enrich your life, not consume it. Boundaries act as a filtering system that removes what is harmful and allows what is healthy to remain. But boundaries don't just shape your relationships with others. They also reshape your relationship with yourself. Every boundary you set is an act of self-affirmation. It tells your subconscious, my peace matters. My needs matter. My feelings matter. I matter. And with every one of these small internal affirmations, you begin rebuilding the self-respect you lost through years of overgiving, over-accommodating, and overextending. You begin to realize that self-respect fuels detachment. Because once your boundaries are firm, you no longer cling to people who harm you. You no longer depend on someone else's validation to feel whole. You no longer accept crumbs in the hope they turn into a feast. You no longer tolerate emotional chaos disguised as connection. Setting boundaries teaches you to detach not from people, but from the idea that your worth depends on how much you endure. Detachment becomes natural when you understand that any relationship requiring the sacrifice of your identity is a relationship you cannot afford to keep. Imagine this. A woman tells herself she can speak up because she's afraid he'll leave. A man hides his needs because he's afraid she'll call him weak. A person remains silent because they fear losing the only connection they have. But when they finally set a boundary, even a small one, something shifts. They see who respects them and who only wanted the version of them that stayed small. They see who values them and who values control. They see who is capable of healthy connection and who disappears the moment self-respect enters the room. A boundary is a revelation. It reveals intentions, truths, and loyalties you couldn't see before. It clarifies who is aligned with you and who is attached only to their comfort. And once you begin to recognize these truths, detachment becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural progression, a quiet, steady movement toward what honors you and away from what harms you. Because the more you protect your emotional borders, the more you protect your identity. And the more you protect your identity, the easier it becomes to choose yourself over anyone who diminishes you. This chapter of your healing is not about becoming hard or inaccessible. It is about becoming sovereign. And sovereignty means you no longer abandon yourself for the sake of belonging. Once you understand this, the next evolution becomes clear. Solitude and self-connection are not punishments. They are the spaces where you rediscover who you are when no one else is defining you. And that is where we go next. Solitude is one of the most misunderstood states of the human experience. People hear the word alone and immediately associate it with emptiness, with a lack, with abandonment, with something missing. But solitude and loneliness are not the same. Loneliness is the fear of being with yourself. Solitude is the freedom of finally being with yourself. Loneliness is an ache. Solitude is a sanctuary. Loneliness is the absence of others. Solitude is the presence of you. And this distinction is the doorway to one of the most powerful transformations you will ever experience. Because the moment you stop looking outward for approval, for love, for validation, for rescue, you begin to hear the voice that has been buried beneath years of noise, your own. Most people are terrified of solitude, not because it is inherently painful, but because silence removes distractions. When the world quiets, the noise inside your mind becomes louder. All the emotions you avoided, all the wounds you never addressed, all the truths you kept buried, they rise. But here's the paradox. The very thing you fear facing alone is the very thing you need in order to heal. Solitude is not punishment. It is a laboratory, a sacred space where your soul is dismantled, examined, understood, and rebuilt. In solitude, you meet yourself without filters, without performance, without needing to adapt to someone else's presence, without bending to someone else's needs, without shrinking your truth to fit inside someone else's expectations. In solitude, you stop asking, "What do they need from me?" and begin asking, "What do I need from myself?" This is where growth begins, in the stillness that forces you to return to your center. Seneca wrote, "The greatest wealth is to live content with little." Most people interpret this as minimalism or simplicity, but the core of his message is something deeper. When you can be content alone, with your own mind, your own company, your own presence, you become untouchable. Because you no longer seek emotional survival in others. You no longer chase people to fill a void. You no longer confuse attention with love. You no longer attach your identity to someone else's approval. Solitude reveals that the emptiness you feared wasn't emptiness at all. It was space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to grow. Space to rebuild the parts of you that were abandoned in the pursuit of connection. When you embrace solitude, you begin restructuring your inner world, piece by piece. You learn to comfort yourself instead of depending on others to soothe your wounds. You learn to validate your emotions instead of begging someone else to acknowledge them. You learn to enjoy your own presence instead of chasing people who barely notice you. You learn to create meaning in your days without relying on someone else's attention to give you purpose. And in this process, something extraordinary happens. You stop fearing silence. You stop resenting space. You stop craving the noise of external validation. You begin to feel whole, not because someone chose you, not because someone stayed, but because you finally chose yourself. There is a moment in solitude when the fear dissolves, slowly at first, then all at once. You wake up one morning and realize that being alone no longer feels like a threat. It feels like sovereignty. You start making decisions not based on who might approve of them, but based on what aligns with your values. You start living in a way that reflects your truth, not someone else's influence. You start recognizing your worth without depending on someone else to reinforce it. Solitude becomes strength. It becomes the foundation of your emotional independence. It becomes the training ground where you practice self-respect, self-awareness, and self-trust. It becomes the space where your boundaries become clear, your patterns become visible, and your identity becomes stable. And when you emerge from solitude, not lonely, but whole, you carry a new kind of energy, a groundedness, a stillness, a clarity that wasn't available to you when you were tangled in attachment. People feel it when they meet you. You are no longer clingy or desperate. You are no longer searching for someone to complete you. You are no longer willing to abandon yourself for temporary comfort. This is the quiet, powerful transformation Stoicism points toward. A life where your inner peace is not determined by the presence or absence of another person. Solitude teaches you the truth. You were never broken. You were simply disconnected from yourself. And once you reconnect, truly reconnect, something else becomes clear. You no longer need closure from others to move forward. Because closure is not found in their explanations, their apologies, or their return. Closure is born in the silence you once feared. Closure is born in the solitude that reshapes you. Closure is born when you stop needing someone to close the chapter for you and start closing it yourself. And that realization leads you naturally, inevitably, to the next stage of your evolution. Understanding that closure is an internal decision, not an external event. Closure is one of the most misunderstood destinations in the emotional journey. People imagine it as a conversation, a final meeting, a heartfelt apology, an explanation that finally makes everything make sense. They imagine closure as something someone else must give them, something external, something delivered, but real closure doesn't come from them. Real closure comes from you. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. Because waiting for closure is another form of emotional dependency. It's waiting for the person who broke you to be the one who heals you. It's waiting for the person who walked away to return and carry you forward. It's waiting for someone else to give you permission to move on with your own life. But nobody, no matter who they were, what they meant, or what they did, has that kind of authority over your future. Closure is not an answer. Closure is a decision. It's the moment you choose to stop hoping they'll return with clarity. It's the moment you stop expecting them to explain what they never understood themselves. It's the moment you let go of the fantasy that their apology could erase your pain. Because the truth is this, even if they came back with the perfect apology, even if they said every word you've been longing to hear, it still wouldn't heal the deeper wound. Why? Because what hurt you wasn't just their actions. What hurt you was the part of you that handed them the power to shape your worth. The wound is internal. Therefore, the healing must be internal. This is where the psychology of expectation comes in. We believe we need closure because we've been conditioned to seek validation outside of ourselves. We think healing requires acknowledgement. We think understanding requires explanation. We think our pain needs to be witnessed by the person who caused it. But all of these beliefs keep us tied to the past. They keep us orbiting around the person who left. They keep us anchored to the very story we want to break free from. The mind seeks closure not because it can't move on without it, but because it craves control. The illusion that if you just get answers, you'll finally be at peace. But peace doesn't come from answers. Peace comes from acceptance. And acceptance is something no one can give you but yourself. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Most people interpret this as self-love, but it's deeper than that. It means accepting your part in the story, accepting your wounds, accepting your projections, accepting your mistakes, accepting the truth you didn't want to see, accepting the version of you that tolerated what hurt you, and forgiving that version too. Because closure isn't about them making things right. Closure is about you making peace with the fact that you gave your heart to the wrong place, and now you're taking it back. Closure happens when you stop trying to rewrite the past. You stop replaying conversations. You stop wishing they had chosen you. You stop imagining how good things could have been. You stop needing their validation to feel whole. Closure happens when you reclaim the energy you spent trying to understand them and begin using it to understand yourself. Because the truth is, you don't need their apology. You don't need their regret. You don't need their explanation. You don't need their return. What you need is your power, and your power returns the moment you stop waiting. Imagine this truth for a moment. The chapter doesn't end when they close it. The chapter ends when you put the final period on the page. When you say, "This is enough." When you say, "I choose me now." When you say, "I'm done trying to salvage what wasn't meant to survive." When you say, "The story continues, with or without them." Closure is not a door someone closes for you. Closure is a door you lock behind yourself when you walk away. And when you finally do, something shifts inside you. You stop being emotionally tethered to the past. You stop checking if they still think about you. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop wondering if they'll ever come back, because you no longer need them to. You are no longer dependent on the person who hurt you to repair the damage. Your healing becomes yours again, private, personal, sovereign. And this is the moment true emotional freedom begins. When you stop waiting for closure, you stop giving them power. Power to dictate your healing. Power to hold your peace hostage. Power to determine when your heart is allowed to move forward. You take that power back, and you place it where it always belonged, inside yourself. This kind of closure is not loud. It doesn't require confrontation or communication. It happens quietly, in the stillness of your own mind, when you finally understand, "I don't need them in order to be whole." That understanding doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with relief, a release, a softening in the chest, a subtle exhale that says, "I am free." And from that freedom, a new chapter begins, a chapter not shaped by longing or wounds, but by intention, purpose, and self-respect. Because once you realize the past doesn't owe you closure, you begin to see that the future offers something far greater, a chance to rebuild your life, not from pain, but from power. And that leads directly into the next stage of your evolution, rebuilding not the life you had, but the life you were always meant to live. Rebuilding your life after detachment is not about starting over from zero. It is about starting over from clarity, from truth, from a version of yourself that finally remembers its own worth. Because once the illusions fade, once the pain teaches its lessons, once the boundaries rise, and once closure is created from within, you stand at the edge of a new beginning. Not a beginning defined by someone else's presence, but a beginning defined by your own rebirth. This stage of your journey is where transformation turns into direction, where healing becomes creation, where self-respect becomes momentum, where you stop surviving and start building. For the first time in a long time, the question shifts from, "Why did this happen to me?" to "What will I make from this?" Because whether you realize it or not, the pain you endured did more than break you. It carved space inside you for something new to grow. This is where rebuilding begins, in the empty spaces that used to be occupied by the wrong people. Most people try to rebuild by filling the void immediately, jumping into new relationships, new distractions, new noise. But the void isn't a punishment, it's a foundation. A blank page where your new identity, values, and purpose can be written. This is the moment to reconnect with the parts of yourself that were neglected, the passions you silenced, the dreams you postponed, the confidence you hid, the goals you abandoned because someone else became the center of your life. Rebuilding means letting your attention return to things that make you feel grounded and alive. Your ambitions, your growth, your inner strength, your self-worth. It is time to ask yourself questions you once avoided. What kind of life do I want? What kind of person do I want to become? What kind of partner would I choose if I truly valued myself? What kind of habits reflect who I am now? These questions are no longer hypothetical. They are the blueprint. Asterisk, asterisk, rebuilding is not reactive. Rebuilding is intentional. Asterisk, asterisk. For so long, you lived in reaction, reacting to their moods, their messages, their silence, their withdrawal. You were living a life that depended on someone else's unpredictability. But now, for the first time, you get to build a life that depends on you. You get to create structure instead of chaos. You get to choose goals that nourish you. You get to invest in habits that elevate you. You get to build routines that strengthen your mind, body, and spirit. This is the moment where discipline becomes healing, where growth becomes medicine, where purpose becomes the antidote to pain, because pain transforms, and purpose arises. There is a reason people say the strongest individuals are forged in difficult seasons. Pain forces you inward, but purpose pulls you forward. Pain wakes you up, but purpose keeps you moving. Pain breaks the old you, but purpose builds the new you. When you begin rebuilding, you start to understand your past didn't ruin you. It refined you. It didn't end your story. It redirected it. It didn't make you weaker. It revealed the strength you didn't know you had. And from that strength, you begin crafting a life built on solid ground, not the unstable foundations of dependency, fantasy, or emotional chaos. So what does rebuilding actually look like? It looks like waking up with intention instead of anxiety. It looks like filling your day with things that make you feel competent, proud, and powerful. It looks like honoring your boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. It looks like choosing relationships that reciprocate your energy. It looks like creating a purpose larger than your past. It looks like becoming someone your future self will thank you for. Rebuilding means choosing routines that nourish your mental clarity, choosing habits that strengthen your discipline, choosing people who value your presence instead of exploiting it, choosing environments that support your growth, choosing silence when chaos tries to return, choosing yourself again and again. Because from now on, your life is not shaped by who stays or who leaves. It is shaped by what you choose to build within yourself. And this is where Stoicism becomes not just a philosophy, but a lifestyle. Stoicism teaches that the only thing you truly control is your inner world, your thoughts, your actions, your intentions, your discipline. When you rebuild from that place, your life becomes unshakable. You stop depending on external validation. You stop fearing rejection. You stop chasing connection. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop losing yourself in people who can't meet you where you are. Instead, you start attracting relationships that align with your strength, not your wounds. Because as you rise, your standards rise with you. Your energy rises with you. Your purpose rises with you. And naturally, your environment begins to shift. You become someone who no longer seeks meaning in other people. You create meaning within yourself. You become someone who no longer asks, "Will they choose me?" You ask, "Do they align with the life I'm building?" You become someone who no longer fears solitude. You find peace in it. You become someone who no longer chases love. You embody the kind of love that attracts what is meant for you. This is the rebirth. This is the rebuilding. This is the moment you step out of the ruins of who you were and step into the person you were always capable of becoming. And as you build this new life, strong, grounded, intentional, you begin to understand the journey didn't end when they left. The journey began when you returned. And this journey doesn't end here. It continues deeper, stronger, further, with every step you take toward mastering your mind, reclaiming your peace, and becoming the fullest version of yourself. If you're ready to keep growing, keep evolving, keep building a life rooted in strength and clarity, then continue this journey with me. Subscribe to True Stoic Way, because the transformation you've begun is only the beginning. There comes a moment, quiet, steady, unmistakable, when you realize that the version of you who once clung, once chased, once begged, once broke, no longer exists. A softer strength fills the space where dependence once lived. A clarity rises where confusion once clouded you. A calm settles where chaos once dictated your every emotion. This is the moment you finally see what this entire journey has been leading you toward: freedom. Not the kind of freedom that comes from walking away from someone else, but the kind that comes from finally returning to yourself. You have stepped out of the shadows of attachment. You have reclaimed the pieces of yourself you once scattered across the hands of another. You have faced the pain that once terrified you, learned from it, and allowed it to shape you rather than shatter you. You have dismantled illusions, confronted your patterns, rebuilt your boundaries, embraced solitude, created your own closure, and begun crafting a life rooted in purpose, not fear. What once controlled you no longer has power. What once weakened you no longer defines you. What once consumed you no longer deserves space in your mind. This is not survival. This is rebirth. And now, standing here at the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, you hold something you didn't have before: yourself, your strength, your clarity, your direction, your self-worth. The journey from attachment to detachment to rebuilding has transformed you in ways you may not even fully see yet, but you will. Piece by piece, step by step, day by day. Your life will begin to reflect the power you've cultivated within. From here forward, your path is no longer shaped by who stays or who leaves. Your path is shaped by who you are becoming, a person grounded in discipline, a person unshaken by external chaos, a person whose worth is self-defined, a person who walks with intention, not impulse, a person who chooses peace over validation, clarity over fantasy, purpose over attachment. A true Stoic, not in theory, but in practice. And this path doesn't end here. This is only the beginning of a larger journey, a journey into deeper strength, sharper discipline, and a mindset capable of carrying you through any storm. If this message resonated with you, if you're ready to keep evolving, keep growing, keep becoming the strongest version of yourself, then take the next step. Subscribe, follow, continue the journey with True Stoic Way. Your transformation has already begun. Now, let's build the rest of your life with wisdom, intention, and unshakable inner power.